The diaper bag slipped from my shoulder for the third time as I fumbled with my apartment keys. Leo whimpered against my chest, his tiny fist gripping my olive green Henley, like it was the only solid thing in his world. Maybe it was. Inside, the air hung stale and cold. I'd forgotten to adjust the thermostat before leaving for work this morning. Another thing on the endless list of tasks I couldn't quite manage to complete. Single parenthood was a relentless tide, and I was drowning one unwashed dish at a time. I set Leo down in his playpen, watching him immediately reach for the plastic rings that hung from the padded edge. 7 months old now, almost 8. He'd started trying to pull himself up last week. Determined little thing. His dark hair stuck up in wild tufts, and when he looked at me with those deep brown eyes, I saw him. Alessandro. Every single time. 15 months since the divorce. 15 months since I'd walked away from the marble floors and crystal chandeliers and the suffocating silence of a marriage that looked perfect from the outside but felt like dying slowly from the inside. 15 months since I'd last smelled his scent, cedar and smoke and something darker that had once made my knees weak and my omega instincts purr with contentment. Now the only scent in this apartment was stale milk and my own anxious beta-adjacent desperation. I've been suppressing my omega biology so long I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to crave. Almost. My phone buzzed. Jessica, probably. She'd been texting all afternoon, worried because I'd mentioned Leo seemed fussier than usual. I ignored it, heading to the kitchen to warm up the bottle I'd prepared that morning. The microwave hummed, filling the quiet apartment with something that almost sounded like companionship. Boston had seemed like the right choice back then. Far enough from New York that I wouldn't accidentally run into Alessandro at some restaurant or gala. Close enough to civilization that I could still build a career. I found work at a mid-sized corporate law firm. Nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills. Barely. The rent was due next week. I tried not to think about the number in my checking account, the way it seemed to shrink faster than I could replenish it. Daycare alone cost more than my first apartment out of law school. Leo started crying, that sharp wail that meant he was genuinely upset, not just fussy. I grabbed the bottle and returned to him, lifting his warm weight into my arms. He latched onto the bottle immediately, but his forehead felt hot against my chin. Too hot. I pressed my lips to his temple, the way my mother used to check my temperature when I was young. Before the accident. Before I became an orphan at 24 and had to figure out how to be an adult without a safety net. Leo was burning up. "It's okay, baby," I murmured, carrying him to the bathroom. "Just a little fever. We'll get you some medicine." But even as I said it, dread coiled in my stomach. I'd given him infant acetaminophen 2 hours ago. It should have brought the fever down by now. The thermometer beeped. 103.2 degrees Fahrenheit. My hand shook as I pulled out my phone, Googling symptoms with one hand while cradling Leo with the other. Every result seemed worse than the last. Meningitis, sepsis, brain damage from prolonged high fever. I called the pediatrician's office. Voicemail. Of course it was past 6 on a Friday evening. Jessica's name appeared on my screen again. I answered this time. "Lauren, I've been trying to reach you. Is everything okay? Leo has a fever. 103.2. I don't know what to do." My voice cracked, betraying the panic I'd been trying to suppress. "Take him to the ER." "No, don't wait." She was right. I knew she was right. But the thought of the hospital bills, the copays I couldn't afford, the questions they might ask about his father, about why I was doing this alone, it all pressed down on me like a physical weight. "Lauren, are you listening? Take him now." "Yeah. Okay. I'm going." I grabbed the diaper bag again, shoved in extra clothes for Leo, his favorite stuffed rabbit with one ear that he'd chewed until it was gray and damp. My wallet. Insurance card. Keys. The elevator in my building was broken again. I took the stairs, counting each one, focusing on the physical effort to keep the fear at bay. 4 flights. Leo's cries had quieted to a weak whimper that scared me more than the wailing. Boston's October night had turned vicious. The temperature had dropped since I'd come home, and the sky opened up just as I reached my car. Heavy, cold rain that soaked through my Henley in seconds. I strapped Leo into his car seat with trembling fingers, checking twice that it was secure. His eyes were half closed now, his little body limp. That wasn't right. He should be fighting, crying, doing something other than this terrible stillness. Stay with me, Leo. Please stay with me. The hospital was 12 minutes away. I made it in 8, running 2 red lights and not caring about the consequences. Let them give me tickets. Let them arrest me. None of it mattered if Leo wasn't okay. The emergency room entrance glowed harsh and bright against the stormy darkness. I ran through the automatic doors, rain still streaming down my face. Mixing with tears, I hadn't realized I was crying. I need help. My son, he has a high fever, and he's not responding normally. The triage nurse took one look at Leo and called for immediate assistance. Suddenly, we were surrounded by people in scrubs, asking questions I could barely answer. Wait. Medical history. Allergies. Is the father present? Someone asked. I froze. The question I'd been avoiding for 15 months. The lie I'd been living. It all came crashing down in that sterile hospital corridor. No, it's just me. They whisked Leo away through double doors. I wasn't allowed to pass. A kind-faced woman in purple scrubs guided me to a small room with harsh lighting and plastic chairs that had been sat in by too many desperate people before me. Someone will be with you shortly to get more information. Try to stay calm. Stay calm. As if that was possible when my entire world was 7 months old and burning up somewhere beyond those impenetrable doors. I collapsed into one of the chairs, my wet clothes leaving dark patches on the plastic. My phone buzzed again. Jessica checking in. I couldn't bring myself to answer. What would I even say? The minutes stretched like taffy, elastic and endless. I stared at the motivational poster on the wall, something about hope and healing, and wanted to rip it down. Hope didn't pay medical bills. Hope didn't cure mysterious fevers. Hope was a luxury I'd lost somewhere between the divorce and this moment. A doctor appeared, young, tired-looking, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Mr. Grant, I'm Dr. Sullivan. Your son is stable for now, but we need to run some tests. His fever is concerning, and given his age and symptoms, we want to rule out some serious infections. What kind of infections? Meningitis is our primary concern. We'll need to do a lumbar puncture. The room tilted. A spinal tap. On my baby. It's the only way to know for certain. But I need you to authorize the procedure, and I need complete medical history. Particularly his father's. Does he have any history of immune disorders? Genetic conditions? Anything we should know about? Alessandro's face flashed in my mind. Strong jaw, dark eyes that missed nothing, the scar on his chin from a fight he'd never explained. I knew almost nothing about his medical history. He'd never shared that kind of vulnerability with me. Never let me pass the carefully constructed walls he'd built around himself. I don't know, I admitted. His father and I aren't in contact. Is there any way to reach him? This could be crucial. Blood type alone might help us. And if there are any genetic factors we should be aware of, he paused, studying me with sudden professional interest. We also need to know his secondary gender. 4 treatment protocols. Some medications interact differently with omega physiology, and if your son inherited any. He's an alpha, I said quietly. His father is an alpha. Dr. Sullivan nodded, making a note. That's helpful. But we still need the medical history, particularly regarding any known alpha-specific conditions. Autoimmune disorders, clotting factors. My throat closed. For 15 months, I kept Leo's secret. Told myself it was for the best. Alessandro had made it clear he didn't want children, had shut down every conversation I'd try to have about our future. When I discovered I was pregnant, a month after the divorce was finalized, I've been standing in a new apartment in a new city, starting a new life. Telling him had seemed like surrendering that fresh start, like giving him power over me again. But this wasn't about me. This was about Leo. I can try to reach him, I heard myself say. Dr. Sullivan nodded, relief evident in his expression. Please do. Time matters here. A low rotor thumped outside the ER. Later, confirmation of what I already suspected. Alessandro hadn't driven. He'd taken a helicopter. Of course he had. We'll begin preparations for the lumbar puncture, but having his medical history could change our entire approach. He left me alone again. I pulled out my phone, staring at the blank screen like it was a weapon that could destroy everything I'd carefully built. I didn't have Alessandro's number anymore. I deleted it the day I moved to Boston, a symbolic gesture that had felt empowering at the time. But I knew someone who would. My old attorney had handled the divorce. She'd have his contact information in the case files. It was past 7 now. She wouldn't be in her office, but I had her cell phone number saved for emergencies. This qualified. She answered on the 4th ring. Lauren, is everything okay? I need Alessandro's phone number. It's an emergency. There was a pause. Lauren, I don't think that's a good idea. The divorce was contentious enough without reopening. My son is in the hospital. They need his father's medical history. Please. Another pause. Longer this time. Give me 5 minutes. I'll text it to you. Those 5 minutes felt like drowning. I paced the small room. 7 steps one way, 7 steps back, counting them over and over to keep my mind from spiraling into all the ways this could go wrong. The text came through. A number I'd once known by heart had seemed light up my phone with promises he'd never kept, plans he'd cancel at the last minute, apologies that meant nothing because the pattern never changed. I stared at it for a full minute before my fingers started dialing. Each number felt like stepping off a cliff. No way back, only the terrifying free fall ahead. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then his voice, deeper than I remembered, rough with something that might have been sleep or irritation. Who is this? I'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in my head. Different versions of this conversation where I was strong, collected, in control. Every single version shattered the moment I heard him speak. Alessandro. It's Lauren. I need to tell you something. Silence stretched across the line, thick and dangerous. I could hear him breathing, controlled but alert. Alessandro had always been like that. Instantly awake, instantly aware. It was one of the things that had terrified me during our marriage, the way he could shift from sleep to fully conscious in a heartbeat. Like a predator's sensing threat. And there it was. Through the phone, even at this distance, I caught a ghost of his scent. That cedar and smoke and something darker that had once made my omega instinct sing. Even now, even after everything, my body remembered. Lauren. My name on his lips sounded wrong after so long. Familiar and foreign all at once. How did you get this number? That doesn't matter. I need your medical history right now. Excuse me? My voice cracked despite my best efforts to stay composed. Blood type. Genetic conditions. Immune disorders. Anything that could be relevant. I need it immediately. Why would you possibly need my medical history at? I heard rustling, probably him checking a clock. 7:30 at night after 15 months of radio silence. The double doors swung open. Dr. Sullivan appeared, his expression urgent. He pointed to his watch, mouthed the word time. Because her son is in a hospital with a 103-degree fever, and they think it might be meningitis, and they need to know if there are any genetic factors before they do a spinal tap. The words tumbled out in one desperate breath. The silence that followed was different. Absolute. Like the moment between lightning and thunder when the entire world holds still. What did you just say? We have a son. His name is Leo. He's 7 months old and he's sick. I need your medical information now, or they can't treat him properly. 7 months. His voice had gone flat, emotionless in a way that scared me more than anger would have. You've had a child for 7 months, and you never told me? Alessandro, I know you're angry, but right now I need... Where are you? Boston General Hospital. But don't move. I'll be there in 3 hours. 3 hours? That's impossible. It's a 4-hour drive and... I said 3 hours. Give the phone to the doctor. I looked at Dr. Sullivan, who'd been hovering nearby, clearly hearing every word through the hospital quiet. I handed him the phone with shaking hands. This is Dr. Sullivan. His professional mask slipped into place. Yes, sir. The patient is stable, but we're concerned about bacterial meningitis. We need comprehensive medical history, particularly. He paused, listening. Yes. Blood type AB negative. Any history of, I see. And immunodeficiencies? No family history. That's helpful. Yes. We'll prepare for your arrival. He ended the call and handed my phone back, his expression unreadable. AB negative. That's rare. Less than 1% of the population. Your son inherited it from his father. He paused. Is that why you needed to know? It could affect treatment protocols and blood product availability if we need transfusions. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Mr. Moretti was very thorough. He also mentioned he's bringing his own medical team. His own team. Dr. Sullivan's gaze sharpened slightly. Mr. Grant, who exactly is your ex-husband? I opened my mouth and closed it again. How did I explain Alessandro? Successful businessman was technically true, but laughably inadequate. Dangerous man, involved in things I'd never fully understood, more accurate, but not something you said to a doctor in a hospital. He's well-connected. Clearly. Dr. Sullivan made a note on his tablet. In the meantime, we're moving forward with a lumbar puncture. The medical history he provided gives us better parameters to work with. You can see Leo for a few minutes before we begin the procedure, but then you'll need to wait outside. He led me through a maze of hallways to a small pediatric room where Leo lay in a hospital crib, looking impossibly tiny surrounded by monitors and 4 lines. Someone had changed him into a hospital gown decorated with cartoon animals that would have been cheerful in any other context. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow but steady. The fever had left his cheeks flushed, his hair damp with sweat. I reached through the crib bars and took his small hand. His fingers instinctively curled around mine, even in sleep. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry, baby. I should have told him from the beginning. I should have been braver. But you're going to be okay. Your father is coming, and he's going to make sure you get everything you need. A nurse entered quietly, began checking the monitors. She had kind eyes, the sort that had probably seen too many scared parents in rooms like this. He's a fighter, your little one. Strong grip. Good vitals considering the fever. We'll take good care of him. She paused. You should try to rest while you can. Once your husband arrives, it sounds like things might get complicated. Ex-husband. I corrected automatically. She gave me a knowing look. Honey, I've been doing this for 23 years. No man flies across state lines in 3 hours for an ex-wife's baby unless that baby is his. And no man reacts the way your doctor described his reaction unless he's about to turn this hospital upside down. She left me alone with Leo for 5 more minutes before another nurse came to take him for the procedure. I kissed his forehead, breathed his baby smell of milk and soap, and let them wheel him away. Back in the waiting room, time turned elastic again. I tried Jessica's number. It went to voicemail, probably asleep by now, like any reasonable person at 8 o'clock on a Friday night. I didn't leave a message. What would I even say? The storm outside had intensified. I could hear thunder rattling the windows, see lightning flash across the dark sky. Appropriate weather for the moment my carefully constructed life began to collapse. Alessandro was coming. Alessandro, who I'd loved desperately and left decisively. Alessandro, who'd shut me out of every part of his real life while expecting me to play the perfect Omega spouse in public. Alessandro, who'd made it abundantly clear he didn't want children when I tried to discuss our future. I'd asked him once, 6 months into our marriage, if he ever thought about having a family. We'd been in bed, one of the rare nights he'd actually been home before midnight, and I felt brave enough to broach the subject. Why would I want that? He'd said, not unkindly, but with absolute finality. Children are targets. Liabilities. Anyone in my position knows better than to give the world that kind of leverage. I hadn't understood what he meant then. Too naive to grasp the reality of his world. I just heard the rejection, felt it settle into my bones like a weight I'd carry through the rest of our doomed marriage. So when I'd seen those 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test, a month after signing divorce papers, standing in my new Boston apartment with boxes still unpacked around me, I made a choice. I'd chosen to protect my child from becoming what Alessandro feared most. A target. A liability. Leverage. Now, watching the storm rage outside, I wondered if I'd protected Leo at all. Or just delayed the inevitable. A commotion at the emergency room entrance snapped me from my thoughts. Raised voices, the sound of someone trying to impose rules and being completely ignored. I stood up, drawn toward the noise even though I knew what I'd find. Alessandro Moretti strode through the emergency room like he owned it. And maybe he did. Maybe he owned half of Boston, and I just never known. He wore a black suit despite the hour, perfectly tailored, not a thread out of place. His dark hair was slightly damp from the rain, pushed back from his face in a way that highlighted the sharp line of his jaw, the scar on his chin that I'd once traced with my fingers in the dark. Behind him came 3 other men, also in suits, moving with the same predatory grace. One of them carried a medical bag, the private doctor's he'd mentioned. And then I smelled him. It hit me like a physical blow, cedar and smoke and that darker undertone that was purely, unmistakably alpha. My omega instincts, so long suppressed, surged to life with embarrassing intensity. My knees went weak. My pulse quickened. Every cell in my body recognized him, craved him, even after everything. His eyes found mine across the crowded emergency room. The world seemed to contract to just that moment. That look. I saw fury there, barely contained, but underneath it, something else. Fear. Raw and real, and so unlike him that I almost didn't recognize it. He crossed the distance between us in seconds. I'd forgotten how tall he was, how his presence could fill a space and make everything else feel small. Where is he? They're doing the lumbar puncture. We have to wait. Show me where. Alessandro, they won't let you back there. They have protocols. I don't care about their protocols. That's my son, and I'm not waiting in a room with outdated magazines while he's going through a medical procedure alone. He's not alone. He has nurses and doctors, and he doesn't have his parents. Alessandro's voice dropped to something dangerous. His scent intensified. Angry alpha, protective alpha, all smoke and territorial fury. It made my omega instincts want to submit, to appease, to fix whatever was wrong. I fought it. 15 months, Lauren. You kept my son from me for 15 months. You said you didn't want children. I said children were dangerous in my world. I never said I didn't want them. He stepped closer, and I could smell his cologne, cedar and something darker. And you proved me right by running away the second you found out you were pregnant. That's not fair. You never let me in. You never told me anything real about your life. How was I supposed to? Mr. Grant? Mr. Moretti? Dr. Sullivan appeared, looking between us with obvious concern. I presume you're the father. Alessandro's mask snapped back into place. Fury replaced by cold control. Where is my son? The procedure is complete. We're running cultures now. But I can't take you to see him. Both of you. We followed Dr. Sullivan through the hospital in tense silence. Alessandro's presence beside me like a storm barely contained. His scent was everywhere, filling my senses, making it impossible to think clearly. When we reached Leo's room, Alessandro stopped in the doorway. His entire body went still. I saw what he saw. Our son, small and vulnerable, hooked up to machines, fighting an invisible enemy. Leo had Alessandro's dark hair, his nose, the shape of his mouth. Looking at them in the same room, there was no doubt about paternity. Alessandro moved forward slowly, like approaching something precious and breakable. He stood beside the crib, one hand gripping the rail, so tight his knuckles went white. "Hello, Leo," he said softly, and his voice cracked on our son's name. "I'm your father, and I'm never leaving you again." 3 weeks passed before I could bring Leo home from the hospital. 3 weeks of antibiotics and monitoring and tests that confirmed bacterial meningitis, caught early, thanks to Alessandro's rapid arrival and his team of private specialists who descended on Boston General like a well-organized invasion force. Leo recovered. Alessandro didn't leave. He'd taken a suite at the Four Seasons, 5 blocks from my apartment, and appeared every single morning at 7 sharp with coffee I hadn't asked for and a determination I couldn't fight. He wanted custody. Not shared, not visitation, full custody with me as the visitor in our son's life. "You kept him from me for 7 months, Alessandro said on day 4 of his Boston occupation. We were in my living room, Leo asleep between us in his portable crib, oblivious to the war being waged over his future. "You made that choice. Now I'm making mine. You can't just take him. I have lawyers who disagree." He pulled out a folder, placed it on my coffee table like evidence in a trial. "DNA test results. Medical records showing you didn't list a father. Financial statements proving I can provide better care. Character witnesses who'll testify about my stability. You run a criminal organization. I run several legitimate businesses. Import-export, real estate development, construction firms. All perfectly legal." His voice stayed level, controlled, but I could see the anger simmering beneath. "What I do in my private life has never been proven in any court of law. Because you pay people off or threaten them. Because I'm careful." He leaned forward, and I caught that scent again, cedar and danger. "I'm also Leo's father. He deserves to know me. To grow up in my world, protected and provided for. Your world nearly killed him. You said it yourself, children are targets in your life. And you proved me right by keeping him secret." His jaw tightened. "How long did you think that would last, Lauren? How long before someone noticed him, traced him back to you, figured out who his father was?" The question hit harder than I wanted to admit. I've been so focused on keeping Leo away from Alessandro that I hadn't considered what happened if Alessandro's enemies found out about him. "I want to be part of his life," I said, hating how my voice wavered. "He's my son. Then come to New York." "What?" "Move back. Let me provide security, medical care, everything he needs. You can see him every day, be his mother, without the financial strain that's clearly destroying you." I looked around my apartment, seeing it through his eyes. The second-hand furniture. The stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen counter. The water stain on the ceiling from the leak I couldn't afford to fix properly. He wasn't wrong about the strain. Every month was a calculation of which bill to pay late, which necessity to sacrifice. "I'm not taking your money. Then work for it." Alessandro sat back, and I saw the negotiation tactics I'd once watched him use in business dinners during our marriage. "My companies need legal consultants. Corporate law, compliance, contracts, all legitimate work. I'll pay you what you're worth, which is considerably more than whatever firm is currently underpaying you. You want me to work for you? I want my son to have both parents in his life. I want you to stop struggling to survive. And yes, I want you close enough that I can make sure you're both safe." His jaw tightened. "The world I live in doesn't care about divorce papers or good intentions. If someone wants to hurt me through Leo, they'll go through you to get to him. Separately, you're both vulnerable. Together, under my protection, we're not assets. No, you're the father of my child. And he's everything I didn't know I needed until I saw him lying in that hospital bed." Alessandro's voice dropped, becoming something raw that reminded me of a man I'd fallen in love with before the walls went up. I missed 7 months of his life, Lauren. His birth, his first smile, all of it. Don't make me miss anymore. Leo stirred, making the small sounds that meant he'd wake soon. Hungry and demanding. Alessandro moved before I could, lifting our son with a gentleness that still surprised me. He'd learned fast these past weeks how to hold him, feed him, change him. He was a natural father, attentive and patient in ways he'd never been as a husband. And every time he held Leo, his scent shifted. Still alpha, still dominant, but softer somehow. Warmer. It made my omega instincts want to curl up next to them both and never leave. Let me think about it, I heard myself say. You have 48 hours. Then I'm filing for emergency custody based on your inability to provide adequate care. That's not fair. Fair is a luxury neither of us can afford right now. He settled Leo against his shoulder, swaying slightly in that instinctive rhythm parents learn. I'm protecting our son. If you can't see that, you're not thinking clearly. He left with Leo still in his arms, taking him for a walk to let me rest. It was something he'd started doing, giving me breaks I desperately needed but resented. Accepting each kindness felt like another link in a chain binding me back to him. I called Jessica the moment the door closed. He wants me to move to New York. Absolutely not. Her response was immediate and fierce. Lauren, you left for a reason. Don't let one emergency erase 15 months of healing. What if he's right? What if Leo is safer with Alessandro, protecting him? Safer from what? Alessandro is the danger. You know what he is, what he does. I know he loves Leo. Saying it out loud made it real, undeniable. I see it every time he looks at him. He's not faking that. Jessica sighed, the sound of someone who'd watched her best friend make this mistake before. Love doesn't cancel out danger. It just makes the danger harder to see. But I was already seeing beyond the danger to the possibilities. Leo with the best medical care, the best schools, never worrying about rent or food or whether I could afford new clothes when he outgrew the old ones. And yes, there was another thought I wouldn't admit to, Alessandro and I together again. But different this time. Partners instead of strangers wearing wedding rings. I spent 2 days researching. Not just Alessandro's legitimate businesses, but everything else. The cartel de Sinaloa he'd mentioned casually one afternoon, describing a territorial dispute that had been simmering for 2 years. The Russian organizations he'd negotiated truces with. The network of families and alliances that made up his world. That's when I found the FBI field office number. Listed publicly for tips and information. I dialed it from a burner phone I'd bought with cash, keeping my voice steady as I reported unusual activity I'd witnessed near the Boston docks. Men speaking Spanish, watching shipping containers. I gave dates and times, descriptions generic enough to be useful, without revealing how I knew. 3 days later, Special Agent Thomas Reed called my actual cell phone. Mr. Grant, this is Agent Reed with FBI. I understand you've been providing information about suspected cartel activity in the Boston area. My blood went cold. I don't know what you're talking about. The prepaid you used pinged a tower near your block. We also ran a voice print on the tip line call. It matched a public recording of you from a bar admissions panel. Plus, you're not in trouble. We met in a coffee shop in Cambridge, far enough from my neighborhood that I felt relatively safe. Reed was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with a kind of forgettable face that probably helped in his line of work. You're in a relationship with Alessandro Moretti, he said without preamble. Ex-husband. And it's complicated. Complicated because of your son. I didn't confirm or deny. Reed pulled out a folder, flipped it open to surveillance photos of Alessandro entering my building, carrying Leo, looking every inch the devoted father. We've been building a case against the cartel de Sinaloa for 3 years. They're expanding into New England, pushing out established operations. Moretti is one of their primary obstacles. If we can get intel on their movements through your observations, We can apply pressure from both sides. You want me to spy on my son's father. I want you to help us prevent a war that could turn Boston's streets into a battlefield. Reed leaned forward. The cartel doesn't care about collateral damage. If they decide Moretti needs to go, they'll take out everyone around him, including you and your child. Why should I trust the FBI more than Alessandro? Because we're bound by laws, rules, oversight. Moretti answers to no one. Reed closed the folder. Think about it. If you decide to help, call this number. If not, watch your back. Because whether you choose to see it or not, you're already in the middle of this. He left me sitting there with a business card burning a hole in my pocket and choices that felt more like traps closing from every side. Alessandro showed up that evening as usual, but this time he had papers. A lease agreement for an apartment in Manhattan, Upper East Side, near Central Park. 3 bedrooms, security, parking, already furnished. You can move in whenever you're ready. I haven't decided yet. Then decide now. I've enrolled Leo with a pediatric practice affiliated with Columbia Presbyterian, best doctors in the country. His first appointment is next week. You can't just make decisions without consulting me. I'm making decisions that protect our son. You can either be part of that or fight me and lose. Alessandro set the papers on my table, then placed another envelope beside them. Contract for legal consultation services. Salary, benefits, everything we discussed. All you have to do is sign. I looked at him, really looked. At 35, Alessandro Moretti was a man who'd built an empire through calculated risk and ruthless execution. But right now, holding our son while offering me a way forward, he looked almost vulnerable. Almost like the man I'd married before everything went wrong. I need guarantees. Name them. I maintain custody. Joint legal custody, with equal say in all major decisions about Leo's life. Agreed. The work I do stays legal. I won't be part of anything questionable. Agreed. And if I ever want to leave, you won't stop me. Alessandro's expression hardened. I can't promise that. Not if it means taking Leo somewhere I can't protect him. At least he was honest. More honest than he'd been during our entire marriage. Fine. Then I get to establish my own contacts, my own network. I'm not just your employee or Leo's father. I'm still my own person. As long as those contacts don't compromise our son's safety. They won't. I signed the papers, watching my signature transform everything I'd built into something new and uncertain. In 2 weeks, I'd be back in New York, living in Alessandro's world again. But this time, I had Agent Reed's card hidden in my wallet and a plan forming that Alessandro would never see coming. I was going to protect Leo from every angle, even the ones his father couldn't anticipate. Even if it meant playing a game more dangerous than anything I'd faced before. The apartment Alessandro provided wasn't what I expected. Upper East Side, 14 floors up with views of Central Park through floor-to-ceiling windows that probably cost more than my entire year's salary in Boston. 3 bedrooms, marble countertops, furniture so pristine, I was afraid Leo would destroy it within a week. But it was the men I noticed first. Standing on the corner when I left for Leo's pediatric appointment. Sitting in parked cars outside the building entrance. Following 3 steps behind when I walked to the small playground 2 blocks away. Alessandro's security. He'd explain when I'd ask, discreet but constant. For our protection. Except after a month of living in New York, I learned to recognize Alessandro's men. They wore dark suits but moved with a particular efficiency, communicated through earpieces, positioned themselves at strategic points. Professional. Controlled. These other men were different. Rougher. They watched instead of protected, studied instead of guarded. I mentioned it to Alessandro during one of his daily visits. He'd taken to arriving around 6 each evening, spending 2 hours with Leo before disappearing back into whatever business occupied his nights. Tonight, he was on the floor of the living room, helping Leo practice pulling himself up on the coffee table. Our son was 9 months now, determined to walk, frustrated by legs that wouldn't quite cooperate yet. There were men at the park today. Not yours. Alessandro's hand stilled on Leo's waist, though his expression remained neutral. Describe them. Hispanic, maybe. Leather jackets. One had a tattoo on his neck, some kind of symbol I didn't recognize. They stayed across the street, but they were watching us. How many? 3 that I saw. He lifted Leo, settled him on his hip, pulled out his phone with the other hand, typed something quickly one-handed, the way I'd seen him do 100 times during our marriage. Always working, always managing something I wasn't allowed to understand. Starting tomorrow, you don't go to that park anymore. There's a private garden on the roof of this building. Leo can play there. Alessandro, what's happening? He looked at me then, and I saw calculation behind his eyes, weighing how much to tell me, how much truth I could handle. The same look that had driven me away the first time. Remember I told you about the territorial dispute with the cartel de Sinaloa? You said it was under control. An impasse. It was. His jaw tightened. Until I broke protocol by appearing publicly at that hospital in Boston. I should have sent representatives, stayed hidden, maintained the separation between my public life and private operations. Leo grabbed his nose, giggling at the game he'd invented of trying to pull his father's face apart. Alessandro managed a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. The cartel maintained surveillance on me, just as I do on them. When I mobilized a medical team, chartered a helicopter, made myself visible in a way I haven't in years, they investigated. It didn't take them long to discover you. To discover Leo. Cold spread through my chest. They know about him. They know I have a son. That changes everything. He set Leo down gently in the playpen, then crossed to the window, staring out at the city below. Before, I was just another obstacle to their expansion. Now I'm a man with leverage they can exploit. A weakness they can target. So what do? We can't just stay trapped in this apartment. We don't. Tomorrow, you both move to my primary residence in Westchester. 40 acres, complete security system, guards I've personally vetted. It's the safest location I have. You want me to live with you? I want my son protected. You're part of that equation, whether you like it or not. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Jessica calling for the 3rd time today. I've been avoiding her, not sure how to explain why I'd moved back to New York, why I was living in luxury while claiming to be independent. I let it go to voicemail again. Your friend is persistent, Alessandro observed. She's worried. I told her I was taking a job opportunity in New York, but she knows something's wrong. Then tell her the truth. That the father of your child is being hunted by a Mexican cartel, and they might use your son as leverage. That'll definitely put her mind at ease. Alessandro turned from the window, and for a moment I saw past the control to something raw underneath. Fear, maybe. Or fury, so carefully contained it looked like ice. I never wanted this for him. For you. It's why I kept you away from my real life during our marriage. Why I shut you out instead of letting you in? Because the moment you became part of my world, truly part of it, you became a target. You're telling me this now? I'm telling you this because you deserve to know what you're walking into. Moving to Westchester isn't just changing apartments. It's accepting that your life is permanently entangled with mine. That Leo will grow up behind walls and security cameras. That normal isn't an option anymore. I looked at our son, happily chewing on a plastic ring, oblivious to the dangers circling him like sharks sensing blood in water. I thought about Agent Reed's card hidden in my wallet, about the choice I'd already made to play both sides of this war. When do we leave? Tomorrow morning. I'll have everything arranged. That night, after Alessandro left, I called Jessica back. She answered on the first ring. Finally. I was about to drive to New York and hunt you down myself. I'm sorry. Things have been complicated. Complicated how? Lauren, you disappeared from Boston, moved to New York, and you're being weirdly vague about everything. What's going on? I wanted to tell her. Wanted to unload every terrifying detail onto my best friend and let her help me figure out what to do. But the words stuck in my throat, trapped by the knowledge that the more she knew, the more danger she'd be in. Alessandro and I are trying to co-parent. It's messy and strange, and I'm figuring it out as I go. Are you safe? The question hit harder than it should have. Was I safe? I was living in a gilded cage surrounded by guards, preparing to move to a fortified estate because drug cartels wanted to hurt the father of my child. Safe seemed like a concept from another lifetime. I'm fine. Leo's fine. I promise. You're a terrible liar, Lauren Grant. Always have been. I know. But right now, this is all I can give you. She sighed, that particular sound of frustrated acceptance. Okay. But I'm here if you need me. Whatever's happening, whenever you're ready to talk, I'm here. After we hung up, I sat in the dark living room, watching the city lights blur through tears I hadn't realized were falling. Tomorrow, I'd move into Alessandro's world completely. Tomorrow, I'd become what I'd fled from 15 months ago. But tomorrow, I'd also keep my son safe. And that was all that mattered. The next morning arrived too quickly. Alessandro's men loaded our belongings into black SUVs with tinted windows, while I dressed Leo in warm clothes for the November chill. He babbled happily, treating the commotion like an adventure. The drive to Westchester took 45 minutes through morning traffic. I watched the city give way to suburbs, then to estates hidden behind stone walls and iron gates. Alessandro's property appeared suddenly, the gates sliding open before our vehicle even stopped. Security so seamless it was invisible until you looked for it. The main house was massive, stone and glass and modern lines that somehow looked both imposing and elegant. Nothing like the Manhattan penthouse we'd shared during our marriage. This was a fortress disguised as a home. Alessandro was waiting on the front steps, having driven separately. He opened my door personally, lifted Leo from his car seat with practiced ease. "Welcome home," he said. And I hated how the words made something in my chest ache with a longing I thought I'd buried. Inside, the house was all clean lines and expensive minimalism. But there were touches I recognized from our marriage. The painting he'd bought at an auction in Milan, the coffee table we'd picked out together in the brief period when he let me help decorate our shared space. I had a room prepared for Leo on the second floor. Yours is across the hall. I assumed you'd have put me in a different wing entirely. I want him close. And you need to be close to him. His dark eyes met mine. This isn't a prison, Lauren. You have full access to everything. The security is to keep threats out, not to keep you in. But as I explored the house that afternoon while Leo napped, I saw the cameras, the reinforced doors, the panic buttons disguised as light switches. This was a beautiful prison. The walls were just made of marble instead of bars. That night, I texted Agent Reed from a burner phone I'd bought before leaving Boston. Move to Westchester. Moretti's primary residence. Cartel-confirmed surveillance. May have more information soon. His response came immediately. Be careful. You're in the center of the target now. I deleted the messages, destroyed the SIM card, and went to check on Leo. He slept peacefully in his new nursery, surrounded by monitors and guards and every protection money could buy. And I wondered if protection and prison were really that different after all. 6 weeks in Alessandro's fortress changed me in ways I didn't want to acknowledge. The nightmares started the second week. Always the same, men with tattoos and cold eyes taking Leo from his crib while I stood frozen, unable to move or scream. I'd wait gasping, drenched in sweat, checking his nursery monitor obsessively until dawn painted the sky gray. Alessandro found me on one of those nights, curled in the hallway outside Leo's room at 3 a.m. I hadn't heard him approach, too focused on watching my son's chest rise and fall through the crack in the doorway. "How long have you been sitting here?" I jumped, pressing a hand to my racing heart. "I don't know. An hour, maybe." He crouched beside me, still dressed despite the hour. Always working, always managing threats I couldn't see. His scent was stronger this close, cedar and smoke and something warm that made my omega instincts want to lean into him to let him make everything better. The same dream. I'd mentioned the nightmares once casually, pretending they didn't matter. Of course he'd remembered. Alessandro forgot nothing. They feel so real. I can see their faces, hear Leo crying for me. Come on. He stood, offered his hand. You can't sleep in the hallway. I can't sleep anywhere. Then we'll sit somewhere more comfortable while you don't sleep. I let him pull me up, too exhausted to argue. We ended up in his study, a room I'd avoided since moving in. It smelled like him, cedar and leather, and that indefinable alpha scent that brought back memories of better nights in our marriage. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed me one without asking. I took it, let the burn chase away the lingering panic from the dream. It's getting worse, I admitted. During the day, I check on him constantly. Every sound makes me think someone's breaking in. I know it's irrational, the security here is. It's not irrational. It's survival instinct. Alessandro settled into the chair across from me, his face half shadowed by the single lamp burning on his desk. You witnessed a real threat. Your brain is trying to protect Leo by staying hyperalert. It's normal. Normal would be sleeping through the night. Normal died the moment you became part of my world. The bitterness in his voice surprised me. I studied him across the dim space, seeing exhaustion etched into the lines around his eyes, tension in shoulders that never fully relaxed. Do you have nightmares? I asked. Every night. For the last 20 years. About what? He swirled his whiskey, watching the amber liquid catch the light. About all the things I've done. The people I've hurt. The choices that can't be undone. His eyes lifted to mine. About losing the few things that matter. The air between us felt charged, heavy with words neither of us dared speak. This was the Alessandro I'd glimpsed during our marriage, the one who existed beneath the control and calculations. Vulnerable and raw and utterly human. And his scent, underneath the smoke and danger, there was something else. Something almost like longing. My omega instincts recognized it immediately. They wanted to respond, to offer comfort, to let him know he wasn't alone. Why did you really shut me out? The question escaped before I could stop it. During our marriage, why didn't you let me in? Because letting you in meant making you a target. Every vulnerability I showed you was information someone could use against me. Against us. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. My father taught me that lesson early. Love is weakness in my world. Family is liability. The moment you care about something, you give your enemies ammunition. But you have Leo now. You clearly care about him. And look what happened, the cartel discovered him within weeks. If I'd kept you both at arm's length, hidden separate from my operations, they never would have known. His jaw clenched. I proved my father right. By choosing emotion over strategy. You're not your father. No, I'm worse. Because I knew better, and I still couldn't stay away. Leo's cry through the baby monitor shattered the moment. I stood quickly, grateful for the interruption, for an excuse to escape the intensity of Alessandro's gaze. I'll get him. Let me. Alessandro was already moving, taking the stairs 2 at a time. I followed, watching him lift our son with a gentleness that still caught me off guard. Leo had started pulling himself up on furniture, determined little fists gripping anything stable, while his legs wobbled beneath him. Hey, little man. Bad dream. Alessandro swayed slightly, that unconscious rhythm parents learn. Leo settled immediately, stuffing his thumb in his mouth. Your father has those too. Must be genetic. Trauma, not genetics. In our family, they're the same thing. I wanted to argue, but couldn't. Alessandro's world was violence disguised as business, power maintained through fear. And now Leo was part of it, whether I wanted him to be or not. Over the following weeks, I threw myself into work. The legal consultation Alessandro had offered turned out to be legitimate, complex corporate contracts for his import businesses. I worked from home office he'd set up, researching compliance issues and reviewing documents while Leo played nearby. But I also continued feeding information to Agent Reed. Conversations I overheard, patterns I noticed in Alessandro's schedule, mentions of territories and shipments. Nothing concrete, nothing that would directly incriminate Alessandro, but enough to help the FBI build their case against the cartel. The guilt ate at me. Every time Alessandro showed me kindness, every time he was patient with Leo, every time I caught him watching us with something that looked dangerously close to contentment. One afternoon, Alessandro found me in the library. Leo had just taken 3 full steps before plopping down on his diaper-padded bottom. So proud of himself, he'd clapped his own achievement. He's walking early. 9 months is ahead of schedule. Determined. Like his father, Alessandro picked Leo up, tossed him gently in the air, until our son shrieked with laughter. The sound filled the huge house, made it feel less like a fortress and more like a home. I've been thinking, Alessandro said, still playing with Leo, about what you said before we moved here. About wanting guarantees. I remember. I can't promise safety. I can't promise normal. But I can promise honesty. He set Leo down, let him practice his wobbly walking between furniture pieces. No more secrets between us. You ask me something, I'll tell you the truth. Any question. Any question. I tested him. How many people have you killed directly? 3. Indirectly, through orders I've given, I stopped counting after 20. The casual admission should have horrified me. Instead, I felt something like relief. He was being honest, finally. After years of walls and deflection. Do you regret it? Some of them. Not all. The world I operate in doesn't allow for much regret. What about us? Do you regret our marriage? His eyes found mine, held them. I regret how I handled it. I regret shutting you out when I should have trusted you with the truth. But marrying you. He shook his head slowly. That's the only thing I've done right in the last 10 years. My breath caught. Leo chose that moment to lose his balance, falling forward. Alessandro caught him smoothly, lifting him onto his hip. Bedtime for you, troublemaker. I followed them upstairs, watched Alessandro handle bath and pajamas and bedtime stories with practiced ease. He'd learn fast, adapting to fatherhood like he adapted to everything else, with focus and determination. After Leo fell asleep, I retreated to my room, called Jessica on the encrypted phone Alessandro had given me for personal use, not knowing he probably monitored all calls anyway. How's the gilded cage? Jessica asked instead of hello. Complicated. That's been your answer for 6 weeks. I need more than complicated, so I told her everything. The cartel, the threats, Alessandro's world, the violence simmering beneath the surface of his legitimate businesses. I told her about Agent Reed, about the information I was gathering, about the impossible position I'd put myself in. Lauren, this is insane. You need to get out. I can't. Leo is safer here than anywhere else. Is he? Or are you just telling yourself that because you're falling for Alessandro again? The accusation landed hard because it was true. I was falling. Have been falling since that first night in the hospital when he looked at our son with such fierce devotion. He's different than he was during our marriage. Or maybe he's just showing you the parts he kept hidden before. That doesn't mean the dangerous parts went away. I know what I'm doing. Do you? Because from here, it looks like you're playing both sides. And eventually, someone's going to figure that out. When they do, being caught between the FBI and a Mafia boss isn't going to end well. After we hung up, I sat in the dark, Jessica's words echoing. She was right. I was playing a game I couldn't win, gathering information for the FBI while living under Alessandro's protection, caring for him while betraying him. A knock on my door pulled me from spiraling thoughts. Come in. Alessandro entered, stopped when he saw me sitting in darkness. Are you okay? Define okay. He crossed the room, sat on the edge of my bed. close enough to touch but leaving distance between us. His scent washed over me, cedar and smoke and something warmer underneath. It made my omega instincts want to curl into him, to let him wrap himself around me and make everything better. Talk to me. About what? About how I'm terrified every second that something will happen to Leo. About how I don't know if I'm protecting him or endangering him by being here. About how every time you're kind to me, I remember why I loved you and hate myself for being weak. The words tumbled out unchecked, raw and honest and revealing everything I've been trying to hide. Alessandro's hand found mine in the darkness. His fingers were warm and solid. You're not weak. You're the strongest person I know. You left me when staying would have been easier. You raised our son alone when asking for help would have been simpler. You're surviving in a world that's trying to break you, and you're doing it with grace. I turned to look at him, found his face inches from mine. His free hand came up, traced the line of my jaw with his thumb. I never stopped loving you, Lauren. Even when I was pushing you away, even when I was being the worst version of myself, I never stopped. Me neither, I whispered. And then his scent changed. The smoke and danger faded, replaced by something warmer, more intimate. Alpha. Mine. It made my omega instincts purr with satisfaction. He kissed me then, soft and tentative, asking rather than demanding. And I kissed him back, falling into the familiar taste of him, the solid warmth of his body against mine. His scent flooded my senses, and I felt my own omega pheromones responding in kind, releasing, inviting, wanting. It felt like coming home and jumping off a cliff simultaneously. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, reality crashed back. We can't do this. It's too complicated. It was always complicated. That's never stopped us before. Leo's cry through the monitor pulled us apart. Alessandro stood, and I saw him force control back into place, the vulnerability locked away again behind his usual mask. I'll check on him. After he left, I touched my lips, still feeling the pressure of his kiss. And I wondered how much longer I could keep playing both sides before everything collapsed. The drones appeared 3 days after Alessandro kissed me. Small dark shapes against the November sky, circling the property perimeter like mechanical vultures. I spotted the first one from Leo's nursery window while changing his diaper, watched it hover near the eastern tree line before disappearing. Alessandro's security team moved immediately. Within an hour, the property went into lockdown. Additional guards materialized from somewhere, positioning themselves at strategic points I hadn't even known existed. The house transformed from fortress to bunker in the time it took me to feed Leo lunch. They're testing our response times, Alessandro explained that evening. We stood in his security office, a room I'd only glimpsed before, watching feeds from 47 cameras positioned throughout the estate. Mapping weak points, calculating how many men we have where they're stationed. The cartel. Who else? He zoomed in on footage from the north gate, enhanced the image until I could see tire tracks in the mud. They've been quiet for weeks. I should have known that meant they were planning something. Leo sat in a portable playpen we brought down, stacking blocks with intense concentration. Almost 10 months old now, he'd mastered walking and was working on running, much to everyone's anxiety. He had no concept of the danger surrounding him, no understanding that men with guns watched his every outdoor appearance through scopes and surveillance equipment. What happens now? Now I meet with them face to face. Neutral territory. Try to negotiate before this escalates into open war. His jaw clenched, the muscle jumping in a way I'd learned meant he was calculating odds, running scenarios. The meeting is set for next week. That's insane. You just said they're mapping the property. This could be a trap. It's definitely a trap. The question is whether I can turn it to my advantage. Over the next week, I watched Alessandro prepare with the same meticulous attention he'd once applied to legitimate business deals. He met with his most trusted people, men whose names I was learning, whose faces had become familiar. They spoke in Italian sometimes, rapid exchanges I couldn't follow but understood were about strategy and contingencies and who to trust if everything went wrong. I threw myself into helping the only way I could. Alessandro's import businesses were legitimate fronts, but they still required legal compliance, contracts that would hold up under federal scrutiny. I reviewed every document, flagged potential vulnerabilities, suggested language that would protect his interests without crossing into obviously illegal territory. "You're good at this," Alessandro said one night. We were in his study, surrounded by papers, Leo asleep in his portable crib near the fireplace. "Better than the lawyers I've been paying premium rates for years. Because I actually care about keeping you out of prison." "Do you?" He looked up from the contract he'd been reading, his dark eyes catching the lamplight. "Care about keeping me out of prison?" The question felt loaded with more than he was asking. I met his gaze, refused to look away, even though my heart hammered against my ribs. "I care about Leo having his father. The rest is complicated. Everything with us has always been complicated." He wasn't wrong. Since that kiss, we've been dancing around each other, carefully maintaining distance while the air between us stayed charged with tension. I'd catch him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. He'd find excuses to brush past me in hallways, his hand landing on my lower back in that possessive way that made my breath catch. But we hadn't crossed that line again. Not with so much uncertainty, not with the cartel circling and Agent Reed waiting for information. I still hadn't figured out how to provide without destroying everything. Speaking of which, Reed had been persistent. 3 encrypted messages in the past week alone, each more urgent than the last. The FBI knew about the upcoming meeting. They wanted details, location, timing, anything that would let them set up their own surveillance. I've been stalling, claiming I didn't have access to that information. It was partly true. Alessandro kept the specifics close, sharing only what I needed to know. But I could have asked. Could have used the trust he was rebuilding with me to extract what Reed wanted. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. "I've been thinking," Alessandro said, pulling me from my spiral of guilt, "about what happens if the meeting goes badly." "Don't, Lauren. We have to be realistic. These men want me dead or weakened. They want access to my territory, my operations. The only thing stopping them from making a move is uncertainty about how my organization would respond to my death. So don't give them the chance. I have to end this. I can't raise Leo in a war zone, can't have you both living behind walls and cameras forever." He stood, crossed to where I sat, crouched down, so we were eye level. "But if something happens to me, I need to know you and Leo will be protected. Nothing's going to happen to you." "Maybe not. Probably not. But I didn't survive this long by failing to plan for worst-case scenarios." He pulled a folder from his desk drawer, handed it to me. "Legal documents. Full custody to me. Trust fund for Leo. Access to accounts that would keep us comfortable for the rest of our lives. Instructions for his second-in-command about our protection." My hand shook as I opened the folder, saw my name on page after page of legal text. He'd thought of everything. Anticipated every possibility except the one where I couldn't imagine him gone. "Alessandro, you don't have to do this now." "Yes, I do. Tomorrow I meet with the cartel's leadership. Tomorrow I walk into a situation where I'm outnumbered and relying on honor among thieves to keep me breathing. Tonight I make sure my son is protected no matter what." Leo stirred in his crib, making the small sounds that meant he'd wake soon. Alessandro went to him automatically, lifted him with a gentle competence that still caught me off guard. Our son blinked sleepily, then smiled at his father with such pure joy it cracked something open in my chest. "Hey, troublemaker. Did we wake you?" Alessandro swayed slightly, that unconscious rhythm. "Your papa and I are just talking about boring grown-up stuff. Nothing for you to worry about." But I was worried. Terrified, actually. The thought of Leo growing up without his father, of Alessandro walking into danger tomorrow and not walking back out, it made it hard to breathe. "Stay," I heard myself say. "Tonight. Stay with us." Alessandro's eyes found mine over Leo's head. Lauren, I don't want to be alone tonight. I don't want you to be alone. Whatever happens tomorrow, tonight we should be together. He nodded slowly, something raw and vulnerable crossing his face before he controlled it. Okay. We took Leo upstairs together, went through the familiar bedtime routine that had become our shared ritual. Bath, pajamas, story time. Leo fought sleep like he always did, determined not to miss anything, until finally his eyes drifted closed and his breathing evened out. Alessandro stood over the crib for a long time after, just watching our son sleep. I stood beside him, our shoulders touching, both of us silent with thoughts too heavy to speak aloud. I never thought I'd have this, Alessandro finally said. A family. Someone to come home to. Someone who made all the violence and danger feel worth surviving. You have it now. Do what? He turned to face me fully, his hand coming up to cup my cheek. Because some days I think you're only here for Leo. That you're tolerating me because you have to, not because you want to. That's not true. Then what is true, Lauren? What are we doing here? The question hung between us, demanding an answer I'd been avoiding for weeks. But tonight, with danger looming and uncertainty pressing in from all sides, I couldn't hide behind fear anymore. I'm falling in love with you again, I admitted. Maybe I never stopped. And it terrifies me because I know what your world costs. I know the price of loving someone like you. And yet you're still here. Because the price of not loving you is higher. Alessandro kissed me then, deep and claiming and full of everything we'd been holding back. His scent flooded my senses, cedar and smoke and pure alpha possession. I melted into him, let him back me against the nursery wall, his body pressing into mine with an urgency that matched my own. My omega instincts surged to life, demanding more. Demanding him. I could feel his alpha pheromones responding in kind, his control fraying at the edges. Not here, I gasped against his mouth. Leo. My room. We barely made it down the hall, stopping twice to kiss against walls, hands already working at buttons and zippers. Inside his room, with the door closed and locked, we came together with the desperate intensity of people who knew how fragile this moment was, how easily it could be stolen. Alessandro's scent wrapped around me, and I felt my own omega pheromones release in response. An invitation, a surrender. His teeth found the junction of my neck and shoulder, the place where an alpha's mark would go, and I gasped. Please, I heard myself say. I want. Not yet. His voice was rough with control. When we do this, I want it to mean something. Not just because we're scared. He kissed the spot instead, gentle now. I want it to be because we choose it. Because we're choosing each other. Afterward, tangled in his sheets with his heartbeat steady under my ear, I felt the weight of everything I hadn't told him. About Agent Reed. About the information I'd been gathering. About the choice I'd made weeks ago to play both sides. I need to tell you something. I started. Tomorrow, Alessandro's arms tightened around me. Whatever it is, we'll deal with it tomorrow. Tonight, just let me have this. Let me have you. Without complications or confessions or anything except this. So I stayed quiet. Let him hold me through the night, and prayed that tomorrow wouldn't destroy everything we'd just begun to rebuild. Alessandro left before dawn. I woke to an empty bed, his side still warm, and found a note on the nightstand written in his precise handwriting. Taking care of business. Be home for dinner. I promise. The promise felt fragile. Like glass I was terrified to touch. I spent the morning trying to maintain normalcy for Leo's sake. Breakfast, playtime, morning nap. But my hands shook when I lifted him, my attention fractured between his babbling and the clock ticking toward whatever was happening in that warehouse across the river. Alessandro had told me the location last night, whispering it against my hair in the dark. An abandoned industrial complex in Newark, neutral ground where neither side held advantage. Or so they claimed. He'd kissed me one more time before leaving, lingering at the doorway like he was memorizing my face. By noon, I couldn't take the waiting anymore. I pulled out the encrypted phone, texted Agent Reed with trembling fingers. Meeting happening now. Newark Industrial District. Warehouse Complex off Route 1. Cartel and Moretti. This is it. His response came immediately. FBI already positioned. We've had surveillance on that location for weeks. Stay put. It wasn't a suggestion, it was procedure. The kind that keeps civilians breathing. Whatever happens, stay where you are. Let us handle this. But I couldn't just sit there while Alessandro walked into an ambush. Because that's what this was, I could feel it in my bones. The cartel had been too quiet, too accommodating about meeting terms. They wanted him vulnerable. Wanted him away from his fortress where they could strike. The call came at 1:15. Not Alessandro, one of his men, voice tight with controlled panic. Mr. Grant, there's been an incident. The boss is hurt. We're bringing him back now. You need to prepare. My vision tunneled. How bad? Gunshot wound. Shoulder. He's conscious, stable, but he needs medical attention we can't provide in transit. We'll be there in 20 minutes. I moved on autopilot after that. Called a private doctor Alessandro kept on retainer. Told him to get to Westchester immediately. Cleared the dining room table, laid out clean towels and medical supplies I'd learned to keep stocked. Asked one of the security guards to take Leo to the nursery, away from whatever was about to walk through that door. Then I called Agent Reed back. Alessandro's hurt. The meeting was an ambush. Your people need to move now, before the cartel disappears. We're already moving. Multiple arrests in progress. Pause. Lauren, you did the right thing. This information, I don't care about that right now. Just make sure they can't hurt him again. I hung up, stood at the window, watching the driveway. Every second felt like an hour until finally, black SUVs, moving fast but controlled. They pulled up to the entrance, and men poured out, surrounding a figure being half-carried between two others. Alessandro. Blood soaking through his shirt, face pale but set in determined lines. When he saw me standing in the doorway, something in his expression cracked. I kept my promise, he said, voice rough. I came home. The next 4 weeks blurred into a haze of recovery and revelation. The doctor removed the bullet, stitched Alessandro back together with the clinical efficiency of someone who'd done this before. No hospitals, no official reports. Just another injury in a life built on violence. Agent Reed called 3 days later with updates. The FBI had arrested 7 members of the cartel's leadership during simultaneous raids across 3 states. The timing had been perfect, because Alessandro's meeting had drawn key players into one location, while his information about their operations had provided targets for the other raids. Your cooperation was invaluable, Reed said. We couldn't have built this case without you. I didn't do it for you. I did it to protect my family. I know. But the result is the same. The cartel de Sinaloa's East Coast operations are crippled. They'll be fighting internal power struggles for years. They won't have time or resources to come after Moretti. After I hung up, I sat in Alessandro's study, processing what I'd done. I'd betrayed him. Fed information to the FBI for months. Used his trust against him. And somehow, accidentally, I'd saved his life by doing it. Alessandro found me there an hour later, moving carefully, one arm in a sling. He'd been pushing recovery, refusing to stay in bed despite doctor's orders. You're supposed to be resting. I've been resting for 3 days. I'm going insane. He lowered himself into the chair across from me, wincing at the movement. We need to talk. My heart dropped. About what? About how the FBI knew exactly when and where to strike. About how their timing was too perfect to be coincidence. His dark eyes held mine, unreadable. About Agent Thomas Reed. The floor seemed to tilt. Alessandro. I've known for 2 weeks. One of my people spotted you with him in Cambridge. I had him investigated, discovered he's FBI Organized Crime Division. Figured out what you were doing pretty quickly after that. Horror washed through me. Why didn't you say anything? Because I needed to understand your reasoning first. Needed to see if you were trying to destroy me or protect Leo. He leaned forward slowly. You were gathering information on the cartel. Not on me. Every piece of intelligence you passed to Reed was about their operations, their movements. You never gave him anything that would hurt my legitimate businesses. I was trying to help. The cartel was hunting us, and the FBI had resources you didn't. You thought you could protect our son by playing both sides. Alessandro's expression softened. You were right. The arrests Reed made yesterday removed every major player who wanted me dead. The organization is in chaos. It'll be years before they're a threat again. If ever. You're not angry. I'm furious. You lied to me, betrayed my trust, put yourself in danger by working with federal law enforcement. He paused. But I also understand why you did it. You saw an option I couldn't see because my pride wouldn't let me cooperate with the FBI. You made an impossible choice to keep Leo safe. I stood up, unable to sit still any longer. I should have told you. Should have trusted you with the truth instead of sneaking around behind your back. Yes, you should have. Alessandro rose too, crossed to where I stood. But I should have let you in during our marriage. Should have trusted you with the truth about my world instead of shutting you out. We've both made mistakes. His good arm came around me, pulling me against his chest. I could feel his heartbeat, steady and strong, alive when he could have been dead. His scent wrapped around me, and my Omega instincts finally relaxed, finally accepted that he was safe, he was here. The doctor says you'll make a full recovery, I whispered against his shirt. I always do. I'm too stubborn to die. Don't joke about that. I'm not joking. I'm promising. He tilted my chin up, forced me to meet his eyes. I can't promise a life without danger. Can't promise the world I operate in will ever be completely safe. But I can't promise I'll always fight to come home to you and Leo. That I'll use every resource, every advantage, every ruthless tactic I know to survive. Because losing you again isn't an option. I was an idiot to leave you the first time. You were brave. You had standards, boundaries I wasn't willing to respect. He pressed his forehead to mine. But we're different now. I'm different. You've seen the worst of what I am, and you're still here. I'm still here because I love you. Because watching you walk out that door knowing you might not come back was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. Because I'd rather live in danger with you than in safety without you. Alessandro kissed me then, deep and claiming and full of promise. And when his mouth found my neck again, I tilted my head, bearing the spot where an alpha's mark would go. Are you sure? His voice was rough. This time, you choose it, I choose it. His teeth sank into the junction of my neck and shoulder, and I cried out, part pain, part ecstasy. His alpha pheromones flooded my system, claiming me, binding us together in a way that could never be undone. I felt my own Omega instinct surge in response, accepting the bond, wanting it. When he pulled back, the mark was there. Permanent. I love you, he said, voice raw. I've loved you since the day you walked out, and I never stopped. I was just too much of a coward to admit it. You're the bravest man I know. I'm the luckiest. Because you gave me a second chance. Reed wanted me to testify if any of the cartel cases went to trial. I told him I would, but only if Alessandro was okay with it. Only if it wouldn't put us in more danger. Alessandro considered it, his strategic mind already calculating angles. Testify. Help them build airtight cases. The more cartel leadership we keep locked up, the safer Leo is. I'll provide additional security during any trial proceedings. You're really okay with me cooperating with the FBI? I'm okay with you doing whatever keeps our family safe. Even if it means working with people I'd normally consider enemies. He smiled slightly. Besides, having contacts in federal law enforcement might prove useful in future. As long as they understand the boundaries. Over the following weeks, Alessandro healed, and our life found new equilibrium. The cartel's leadership remained in federal custody, charged with racketeering, drug trafficking, and attempted murder. The organization splintered into factions fighting for control, too busy with internal wars to threaten us. Alessandro's legitimate businesses thrived without the constant pressure of territorial disputes. I continue my legal work, now officially consulting for both his companies and occasionally for the FBI when cases overlapped with organized crime. We weren't normal. Would never be normal. But we were together, and we were safe. And that was more than I'd ever dared hope for. One evening, I found Alessandro in Leo's nursery, watching our son sleep. Almost 11 months old now, Leo was walking everywhere, getting into everything, fearless and determined like his father. "What are you thinking about?" I asked quietly. "About how this almost didn't happen. How I almost lost both of you because I was too proud to let you in." His hand found mine. "About how lucky I am that you gave me a second chance. We gave each other a second chance." He pulled me close, and we stood there together, watching our son dream. Two people who'd survive impossible odds to build something worth fighting for. And I smiled, my hand finding his, my neck still bearing the mark of his claim. This was our life now. Complicated, dangerous, imperfect, but ours. And I wouldn't trade it for any version of safety that meant losing him.